Cool. Welcome everybody to our session on thinking about eco-social education from the viewpoint of solidarity schools and solidarity more generally, positionality, privilege, and what it might mean to valorize different kinds of knowledges, especially migrant knowledges in eco-social education. Those are kind of big themes. There's a lot in there, obviously. These are themes that have come up in different of our previous forums in various ways. And this question of how to not be patronizing when teaching things to do with climate and ecological crisis is like a key question that has come up a lot for us. So we thought it's really good to dedicate a proper forum to that and to really also learn from people who have experience working with, different communities and people from different backgrounds to think that through. So we're very excited to have with us today some people, Christos Korolis and Christos Giovanopoulos from the Solidarity School Network in Greece. That will speak a bit from especially, I guess, an Athens-based experience, but maybe also more broadly. And we also have Amarisa Giannulli from Greece with us, who will also share some thoughts on the kind of Greek situation around solidarity-based education and what it might mean to think this kind of ecological question within it. So that's the first presentation we will have. And we're really excited about that because we are very big fans of solidarity schools and have been following your work for many years. And we think we have a lot to learn from you. And it's really great to have some examples of self-organized education in this, because we've had a lot of conversations with teachers at different levels and with people working in NGOs and so on. But it's cool to get like a proper movement perspective on education in TRU here from your long-standing experience. And then the second presentation we have today is another super rich experience that Asmir Savic will share with us. That comes out of a Munich-based project. It's called KlimaGerechtMachen, which is also a lot about working with young migrant kids, thinking about what it might mean to valorize their knowledges when it comes to fighting around climate justice, right? And undoing a lot of the ways of thinking around climate justice that we might find out there. I'll leave it to Asmir to kind of explain that more proper. But very exciting to have like these super rich experiences with us today. So thanks a lot for being with us. In the chat, you find the link to the Jamboard. There's a bunch of questions that we kind of use to prepare this session or that we would like to think through. And I'm just going to read them out briefly. Maybe I will just share my screen for a second and actually show them to you. Why not? So those questions are, what might it mean to educate for eco-social justice in a mixed classroom with kids who have experiences of migration and/or geographical reference beyond the global north, and so have specific experiences and knowledges of eco-social crisis that differ from maybe local ones in the global north? Another question is how to valorize and learn from such knowledges and experiences, and how to educate with justice, class, race, and gender in mind, also with peripheries and the global south in mind. Another question is, how do we recognize our different positionalities and privileges when it comes to climate and ecological crisis? How do we make sure eco-social education isn't patronizing? And finally, what does it mean, or might it mean, to do radical education outside state schools, but still linked to them? So this is the case of the Greek school solidarity schools that, as we will hear, are linked into the Greek curriculum as after-school entities, but are autonomous, right? How do we foster education, not just as a matter of learning, but also of justice, community, and self-organization? So I will stop my screen share. That's a lot already on our plate for today. We thought to give 15 minutes for the first presentation, and then we will have the second presentation, and then we will just open the floor and have a conversation all together. Did I forget anything, Nelly, or should we jump straight in?
No, I think that's great. I mean, these questions guide us. We hear from you all, and then we think them through together. It's not by no means a program. That's just what we were thinking preparing the session. Yeah. But yeah, that's great. Looking forward to hear from you.
Yes, and I will. I don't know if I think I will leave it to you, Christos, or Christos, especially you, to maybe say 2 sentences about what the solidarity schools are. I'm not sure everybody knows. And then go into that. So thanks so much for being with us.
We thank you a lot. We thank you a lot for being here, and yeah, I think that it's the second or the third time we've seen each other, Manu. Okay, I remember you being here in the past and all these very inspiring conversations that we had back then. So I'm gonna make use of 13 minutes, and I'm gonna give 2 minutes to Christos Ioannopoulos. No, okay. So I'm using. Am I using 7-8 minutes just, and then I will split it this way. So I will have to use my mobile phone for this because otherwise, I think
I
that
will
that's.
also give. I can also give you a little. I'll tell you when 10 minutes are passed or
Oh,
something.
okay. Well, to tell you the truth, I got very enthusiastic about the purposes of this meeting, and let me tell you that we are Solidarity School of Mesopotamia here in Moschato, a suburb of Greece, which is, let's say, the biggest solidarity school within the network of solidarity schools in Greece. We're very interested in these kind of issues, and we have been collaborating with plenty of institutions and universities, actually with things related to democratizing education in general, with pedagogical issues, but with community issues, because for us, communityism and education are 2 terms that interrelated and totally united, which means that we do not apply pedagogy in the sense that we are trying to implement a pedagogical theory or a specific pedagogical aspect. We don't believe that change will derive within the 4 walls of a classroom, but we want to open schools to the community, and the community to get closer to what education might be. So this is our perspective as Solidarity Schools. Our network and our initiatives emerged out of the Greek crisis after 2010, but of course it was united to the experience of other initiatives that had to do with migrant schools here in Greece. We had a very rich movement in general back at the beginning of this century. But we are the outcome of this Greek crisis. Of course, we have transformed a lot since then. And we have reached to a point to respond to the needs of thousands of people all over Greece. But at the same time, we are at this point that we are able to describe a different kind of education through creating communities, actually. So our contribution to this has to do with the fact that we respond to the imminent need that the people have, which means that we do not create utopias away from the frame of public schools and private schools. I think that you know that in Greece, despite the fact that apparently most of children join public schools, the truth is that our education is private to a very significant extent, and this happens for 2 very important reasons. The first reason is because to get into university or to get a degree, a certificate of a foreign language, you need to have extra classes. And of course, not all students join universities, which means that the better you perform at the exams, the more possibilities you have to enter. This means, private classes. So when the Greek crisis emerged about 15 years ago, one of the most important things, the needs that emerged for a typical Greek family was this. that they were not able to have these extra classes for their children, because it was in their monthly program. In the monthly part of their salary was given to them, and when salaries disappeared because unemployed rose a lot, that was impossible back then. So we started by trying to persuade people not to quit, not to forget their dreams, despite the fact that we oppose to the way the Greek educational system is constructed. And we have been trying to show this opposition. But the first and prime purpose still remains that we have to respond equally, and we have to give to the best possible extent the possibility for people not to have a view of themselves which is formed by other people, and more specifically by all these neoliberal, all these neoliberal blur that our country lives in. Now, through this approach, we managed to transform a lot of things, and actually the fact that we did not implement any specific pedagogy, we tried to articulate another kind of communitism, because our initiatives are parts of social movements. We are not solidarity schools that emerged out of nothing. We are initiatives that are part of other initiatives with a specific political context, which means that we are part of social groups that work with democracy and consensus, not with voting, that are very interested in motivating people to participate in a real sense by making use of all the necessary tools that democracy provides, either direct democracy or representation to some extent, or a kind of a voting or a kind of a consensus. This is something that we are working according to the specific conditions. Most of us are no legal forms, which means that we have to invent, to come up with ideas in order to find funding. But this is a very good opportunity, because in this way we can collaborate. We have to think of how we can collaborate, which means that it is not possible for us, and we don't want to get any subsidies or any grants from private institutions. We are not related to private institutions, where we are not connected to European programs, but of course we might get part of some funding of these programs just by collaborating with other partners and being part of other initiatives, etc. Now, I want to tell you that our contribution is based on social transformation, of course, and we have seen through these years that the main problem that we respond to has to do with the social need of the people, and not with the financial one, with an economic one. We are a very isolated community here, because the Greek dream is built on actually personal targets that someone should set. This is what most of the political parties, propose, and it is very characteristic to this that even some political parties here in Greece that are supposed to be left or even radical left, they say that they're going to revive this Greek dream to the people, and they think of themselves being leftists at the same time. Anyway, I would like to tell you, having to do with the essence of our meeting and the agenda that we've seen. I've seen in the mails and the questions, etc. The fact that we are part of social movements means that we are all very familiar with some very important efforts that have been made in terms of protection of open space here and natural environment here. For example, here in Moschato, in Mesopotamia, the privatization of the coastal area here has been a very essential point for us in order to come together and form Mesopotamia, our community here. We are all persuaded, and especially after all these memoranda and all the story with Greek bankruptcy, that one of the most important things that were affected was these open spaces and all the ecological issues that raised after this, because everything, is everything is getting more and more private. And the problem is that a big part of the Greek public view is convinced that the way that we will create a better environment for us all is by privatizing everything, regardless of anything else. And this is a fight which is very difficult, of course. Of course, we oppose to this approach, and at the same time, we oppose to whatever separates human rights or ecological issues from a total transformation of the Greek society and the human rights on the whole, which means that we strongly oppose to what the neoliberal government here does, which says that, okay, I'm going to provide you with some civil rights laws having to do with diversities, or having to do with the fact that we use less carbon dioxide, etc. But at the same time, the problems within the society remain and become bigger and bigger. So since I've wasted, I could say many more things, but I don't want to waste any more time. I think that it is very crucial for you to know that we are very, very slow at implementing practices and implementing necessities that the globe has. The global problems that we have been facing are very, very slow at being absorbed in the Greek education system, in terms of human rights, in terms of religion, in terms of climate change, etc. We are very slow, and accordingly, our social movements are very slow too, because unfortunately, we have to follow to some extent the typical program and respond to its needs. This is the first. The second thing, and the last one, is that we are in the middle of a very, very difficult situation. Back then, when we began our initiatives, it was that we were trying to persuade the people that nothing is wasted, that we can help each other. Now, the problem has changed a little bit, not a little bit, to a very big extent, because we have been trying to motivate the people that they have to be interested in climate change. They have to make dreams having to do with the education of their children, etc. Which means that some people here, a big part, this is what we were trying to prevent then, and of course the political system failed back then in 2015. It was what we are experiencing now, not to create social classes, of a limited space of dreams for them, limited expectations. This is what is going on here in general. Now, for any other information, I'm very open to provide you with information having to do with our initiatives, which I think is very helpful to come closer to us and see what we're doing here as Solidarity Schools.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Christos. We can also post some links in the chat. I'm putting some in the Jamboard to English language things to do with the Solidarity Schools. I think that gave us a really good overview. It's going to be really interesting to go into depth also, I think, with Christos Giovanopoulos now, and also Amaris, about how to think the question of the ecological crisis, the climate crisis, and what that means in that specific Greek context, which is so particular and one we really need to learn from. So I'll pass over to you, Christos, and then I will pass over to you, Amerisa. I will say when like maybe a few minutes are over, just to be sure that we don't go completely over time. Very cool that you're with us.
Okay, thank you, Manu, and thank you for the invitation and organizing all this interesting stuff. I want just briefly to tell something regarding the questions that you raised about the solidarity schools, and then about the ecological crisis in Greece and how it is lived, because it is a peculiar positionality of Greece regarding this matter also. So regarding the solidarity schools, something important, just some facts. Something important is that this practice of providing education in solidarity, voluntarily and free for all, etc., started from the refugee solidarity movement, way before the crisis. Okay, during the crisis, it was created a condition that that this practice was generalized because there were common needs between the locals and the non-locals, and created a common ground that those two demographics, let's say, came together. This was a great opportunity, and indeed, the solidarity schools, they acted as spaces of cross-fertilization, of meeting, of mingling with each other, knowing each other, etc. And it was in their aims also to do this. And this is important to think. I remember that this was larger, the aim, one of the aims of the solidarity movement at that time, that where you had strong solidarity, local solidarity networks, Golden Dawn, the neo-Nazis then, they had problem. Okay, kind of exercising influence. Okay, this is, so I'm telling this facts, let's say, or history, in order to contextualize and see some of the benefits of having this kind of schools, and that it is not related, as Christos says, only to the pedagogical or the teaching issues as such, but it addresses and also larger, wider social questions. An outcome of the solidarity schools regarding their function, it is that they become new spaces of reference for the local communities where they work. And as such, because of these different demographics and their kind of, I would say, openness and inclusivity, they start kind of weaving new kind of urban networks. Okay, some say cosmopolitan from below, some, I don't know, I don't want to name it, but it is also a very, I would say that it's a more organic way of accommodating people with needs, regardless of ages, of religion, etc. And I have to add that the solidarity schools lately, very intentionally, they have opened up issues regarding gender equality, sexual issues, and things like that, yeah. And how they can fertilize their practice, despite the fact that they support the public school curriculum, but how they're going to fertilize it with this kind of issues. This is the second point. And another one, it is that we have to imagine them as ecosystems. It's not that they don't restrict themselves into the educational practice, but they organize the solidarity towards the wider community, towards the wider issues. Either this being some people, for example, had big floods, okay, in poor areas, or for the immigrants that arrive in Greece and things like that. So we have concrete actions that everybody can participate, and there the positionality changes, you know, between people in the solidarity schools. You have parents that they may be teachers, but also they may be students, okay, and they sit at the same desk with their kids. We have old and new and young people. You have Greeks and non-Greeks. You have different ages and different cultures, and you have people that you know, they go and they receive education as in solidarity, and then they have to be the ones that they provide solidarity. Okay, so this is a larger kind of pedagogy when they do acts of towards the wider community. So this is an ecosystem that in reality solidarity becomes that became a training ground, you know, for a different type of relations, different type of human beings, let's say, to exist. Just those in brief, you know, about some elements, some qualities of the solidarity schools that may be helpful to address some of the questions that you made. And the last one, I think Christos also insists very much on that. He passed it a bit in his presentation. It was that the solidarity schools, they're not against the public education. They're not contrary to the state-funded public education system. They want to be, let's say, the incubators of methods or of a model of how public education should be. And this is very interesting. And also in the meetings that they organize, they try to engage public schools in the discussion and also in the practice to highlight good examples from the public education. So the transformative element is not, again, it is focused on the education, but also it is not restricted by education and by this on this field. Yeah. So now regarding the eco-social issue, okay, Mesopotamia is a good example of how, because the Mesopotamia was founded to counter the privatization of the coastline in Moscato. And then it transformed and developed the solidarity school practice. We had in the past sites kind of urban movements about the public space and protecting the environment and green issues, but not in the ecological sense that exists in its dominant the discourse or the practices in the Western Europe, let's say. Now in Greece, if you see, for example, there are movements against big dams, one or two, against the excavation of gold for gold, etc. Although they have been defeated even in the courts and institutionally, and they're in very difficult situation. But it is one that is against the wind parks of the renewable energy. So Greece is on the top of the countries that they have replaced carbon generated energy or fossil fuels, let's say, with a renewable energy. Yeah, they have a large proportion of production of renewable energy, but this becomes in the expense of liquidating local communities, of liquidating agricultural production for local needs, of having blazes for fires in the forest in order to be turned to wind parks, and of damaging, natural spaces. So again, we are in between this kind of extractivist. I'm finishing. We have this extractivist. We suffer from this extractivist policies of the green agenda. That is not easy to discuss this matter in the same way that is discussed in countries, like the big European, the big industrialist developed countries.
Thank you, Christos. Thank you both, Christoses. Super. It really makes me think a lot about, it will be great to talk later about both, I think, those kind of urban, social, and ecological or environmental issues, no, that are really pertinent to where the school actually is. And like so many of the issues you mentioned, I guess the fires also, right? Wildfires, water. I mean, it's kind of endless, and Greece is such an affected country also. So also what that means. And then also to talk about what it means to be working with families that maybe come from places that have experienced some of this stuff already, you know, in the past, and maybe that's part of the reason why they even migrated in the first place. Or so one of the questions we're interested in is also, what does it mean to work with those kinds of experiences firsthand, and what can we learn there, you know? So I would pass over to you, Amerisa, for also some brief comments before we move on to you, Asmir. Thank you for being with us.
Well, thank you. I don't know what I could say without repeating what was already mentioned. Maybe I would say that indeed what I see is that solidarity schools and similar initiatives offer this kind of alternative value system, a different understanding of the economy itself. And I mean, ultimately, participating in such initiatives mobilizes these transformative processes that change people, change subjectivities. And this changes how we eventually relate with each other, how we relate as people, how we relate with nature. So it challenges this individualistic perspective or the need to privatize everything for profit. And eventually we kind of challenge this idea of exploiting the planet and these extractivist approaches that have been emerged historically, and they continue with neocolonial practices. So I would say that such commoning practices are already part of an eco-social curriculum without even explicitly stating like, okay, we care about the climate change specific topics, because they directly interfere on this relationality that we have with the whole ecosystem. And I just wanted to kind of close it with a positive note, or the hopeful thing. A few months ago, I did a participatory spatial planning activity with high school students, and one of the topics was related to social issues, social justice. There were other topics as well. There was the ecological question, or how to link with the broader community, but it was so interesting that most of the people, the young people, were interested to talk about the social issues, to talk about how to be more inclusive with their other students that maybe they have migrant profile, or maybe they are people with disabilities, or both, because we can speak also about the intersectionality. And well, for me at least, what really came out from it, and it really resonates with what solidarity schools are trying to promote, is that one of their proposals was, what if we create within the schools support systems, support working groups, where we, the children themselves, teach others, teach the other children. So yes, I think this way I could even see it a way as institutionalizing in a way that is not co-opting the whole, and it bridges this, it communicates different parts, if we can say that they are different parts. Yeah, so thank you.
Thank you. I think you're totally right. We talked about that also in some previous session, about the fact that the struggles don't need to be putting environmentalism on their, you know, on their T-shirts, to be about ecology and the environment. And I think actually often when they don't, that's when they maybe develop the most interesting approaches. And yeah, also super exciting, or I'm really curious to hear also about what it might mean to work with different social movements through the school, since this is a lot about working with social, and whether there are also ecological justice movements that you work with, or that might come up. Anyways, leading on to our next presentation, which I think maybe Nelly also has better way to introduce it, since she also has a personal pathway into it, which I think the question of justice is also really central in this one, and what Asmir will tell us. So over to you, and thanks so much to all of you.
Okay, I just quickly introduce you. This thing happened again, that always happens in these forums, is that although we don't curate or think about what comes after the other, Marisa just led us really beautifully in to Asmir's presentation. Thanks again, Christos, and Marisa, for your presentations. Asmir is actually right now in Bosnia, but is going to talk to us about Munich, where I'm from, also, and what happens in a place where climate crisis and climate protection are really keywords. But then, if you start talking about climate justice, intersectionality, people think like, oh, that's very lefty. Which is what you told me, which I thought was really significant for what we're trying to think here together, how to bring eco-social justice into schools. And Asmir is going to talk to us about a project where precisely young people are teaching adults, I think, or maybe also other young people on how to do this. So I'll just lead over to you. I think you have a much better way of sharing. I'm going to share your document, right?
Maybe
you
not
tell me when.
immediately. Yeah, I will tell you when if there's
cool.
If there is a need, because yeah, I don't know if you hear me very well, because I'm on the okay, it's great. So I was thinking, actually at first I was thinking, okay, I will present the project and what we do, but now I think it's good to talk about first to explain you a bit the context of what is a Munich and what are we talking about actually in Munich, yeah? Because the Munich is very, probably Bayern Munich, and it's very rich city in Bavaria, in Munich, in Europe, in Germany, and but nobody thinks that there is the highest percentage of the residents of in Munich are the people who have, how we call it in Germany, the people with the migration background, which we try to move from this kind of talk, and we say that that are the people with a migration experience. But this is in a Germany. It's also something which is generational. Yeah, so we have already third or fourth generation of people who moved. Maybe you know that from the social studies. So this Gastarbeiter, known movements who are coming, also the people from Greece as well, or people from Italy first, people from Yugoslavia, like me, or other people who are building, so to say, this kind of society in the Munich, which is also rich society, which has all these systematic forms of schooling, which is actually very problematic. So if we go to the school of system German Bayern school, which is coming from Prussia, so it's like already something which is already from 19th century. Not very modern and not very developed, so to say, in the way to be now inclusive also for all this what we learn after 19th century that works for young people in the pedagogy. So this is like a bit of context, and in Munich there's a lot of organizations, like the one organization we are also made a cooperation with. They are working for many years into the, so to say, sustainable development goals, into the all doing about climate neutrality or transformation, and it's more based on the education forms which are also non-formal. So there are organizations, different kind of organizations, which are working not in the schools, but also connected with the schools or after the classes in the cultural centers and the different way, who are reaching to young people and talking about zero waste and recycling, upcycling, and so. So in 2020 or 2019, there was already this story about, okay, there is always, like in this German society, there is always, okay, we have to find the other ones as this community which is marginalized or migrantinized. There are always somehow a problem. So how to move these people? It's also one way of how German politics and talk. How to give these people possibility also and that's also this way of what Manuela was saying, like not using this kind of higher ground to teach someone about something. And of course, in 19, there was a big movement of young people, Friday for Future, you know that, who were like on the streets and trying to move to, so to say, this the story about climate change. And what we saw, it's the study which was done. It was shown that only in Munich you have more than 45% of people who are coming from with a different background, so with a migrational background, who are and in the study of Friday for Future, we had only 10 till 12% of young people who have a migrant background, let's say, who were involved in this process and who had a chance to talk about their problems in the climate in the climate change. So the idea was, with this project we started, the idea was how to move or how to make a bigger participation of the more wider group of young people who will be involved into this process. For me, it was I start with this project, and on the beginning it was very clear. Okay, I have to reach to young people. I have to reach them to the places where they are coming. It was always like about the culture, about the music, about the hip hop. So we go into different places. We talk with the people who are doing hip hop. We talk about the climate change and about this topic. So the first thing which was popping up from these talks was actually that it was not about upcycling and recycling and all the other forms of climate protection, but it was about social justice. It was about climate justice. So the people were when we start to talk about climate justice, and when we start to talk about intersectional perspectives, when we start to talk about gender issues, but also the race issues, which are decolonial stories, the young people start to have open eyes and start to coming to our work and the group work and the workshops we were dealing with. Of course, the next problem which we saw was that, as Nelly was saying, of course, the Bildung für nachhaltige Entwicklung, the sustainability education, was already in the politic, and the Munich made 2000, like just last year or this year is published the new strategy for 2030, and of course they wanted us to be part of it. But they didn't want to talk about climate justice, because the climate justice was some kind of talk of the left, yeah. And also we start to think, okay, the most what we need if we want to have a bigger participation of the young people inside of this work, we have to make a multiplication, as we have to multiply the people. As I don't know how to say this in English. We call it in German. We call it multiplicators. So it are the people who we try to train to be the trainers for the social justice or climate justice education. And we moved we created, so to say, the school, like the training schools, the models that the people can visit, and in these models were like the colonial stories, the gender issues, the intersectional thinking perspectives. So we start really on the very higher level of education, so to say, to talk with young people who didn't know this kind or didn't have this knowledge, yeah. But we very fast we saw that they can talk on this level. That maybe there is a parts where we can use like easy, how I don't know, Leitsprache, like easy language, and that we can made this kind of workshops in the way that they can work with it, but also that they can work with the different participants, like that that they can work also with young people, but also with old people. We did, and these trainings they made, they were made and they were also shared. So the idea is that this online shared material, which is made from young people, and our training works we did with them, are something like it's an info material for them too, like a puzzle system that they can now take this informations and make their workshops alone. One of the very for us, what was a challenge was actually to say to our donators, and also to town mainly, to say like, okay, we have to pay the young people also to do this job, because like, I don't know how you in NGOs, it's always if you have a participants, then they are participants of the program, and they are not paid for doing any kind of workshops or something, because they are participants. Because we said, okay, we want to have the groups who are marginalized, we want to have people who are not have access on this kind of education, or this kind of way to work on this, then our, let's say, our how we try to explain, we said, okay, the young people, they want to change, they want to participate, they want to be part of this society, but they know also that this society is a capitalistic society. So they also know how to count. If they have 1 hour work and then they have to do something for this hour, they know also that there is a money behind. And we have to actually respect, if you want to quantize and respect their work, then we have to do it as this, because we live in the capitalistic world, and we have to accept this like that. So it was 2 years fighting until we now have a project which is called KlimaGerechtMachen, or climate just do, or the just climate. Which actually works on that level. We have 16 young people who are already like trainers. We have 3 persons who are like with 30 hours, who are like some kind of trainers for the young people, or trying to reach different centers and cultural centers who wants to have these workshops. And we give these workshops to young people who are now the trainers, who goes to these different kind of institutions, also the schools, and do the workshops. The workshops are made from young people, for young people, but also we went to different institutions, and we worked also for not only for young people, but also for children, and also for adults. So it's changed from there, where it's come the interest to make these workshops, and we call it climate justice workshops, because we go to all this general let's say idea of climate problems are not the problems only of today, but they have also the historical problems which we have, and also the social problems, or injustice that we had, and we try to not to make them as they are not experts in the subject, but they are the ones who are moving the subject to different societies, and working, so to say, with them to make a bigger dialogue, or this talk about climate justice. So I don't know, I put a lot of things inside. I didn't want to be long. I hope you understood. The only what maybe to finish with just with a good thought that that like in this first 2 years we start to to move from, because in all our ears, there's a lot of NGOs and a lot of also city organizations are always the participation. So we try to, in German, there is a word, Teilhabe und Teilgabe. It's like a participation and to give something for the participation, let's say like this. I cannot really translate it, but if you want to make someone or young people to participate into something, they have to get something also. They have to have an interest of it, so they have to also have get something out of it. Of course, it's not only about the money, because the money is not like they don't get paid so much that is a reason why they do it. But this is also something we need to learn, so to say, that the real participation is also when the people who participate have interest inside of this participation and has moves in the two ways. So we are listening also the young people or the people who are inside of this participation process. I think that's about it. There is some parts of the questions I was reading in this Jambi that are very interesting. We can talk about them. And of course, the next level, of course, there is always, we had young people then who were involving, let's say, in these workshops. They did the more politics inside, like we had now the war with Palestine and Israel and all of this kind of, there is always discussions which come inside, which maybe doesn't belong really inside of the climate, but then you can, they start to talk about these subjects as well. So it's a good form, and it's a resource also. When we saw it intersectional, it's a resource also to build the allyship, to work together and to build the allyships with the different groups. And we saw it, and we have experience in it, and it works a bit, like in the context of Munich. Until now, who knows?
Right. Thank you so much, Asmir. That's really, really interesting. Maybe we stop recording now, and